Good morning, dear. So welcome to our topic this week, which is about immunohistochemistry. Yan, huwag kayong mag-alala, guys. So, madali lang naman ito. So, class, sometimes we need to level up our staining because what's good about immunohistochemistry is it's highly specific. So, today, guys, our topic, so we want to define what's immunohistochemistry, its principle. So, there are two main methods on how we do it. Its application, limitation, the techniques, and example antigens or tumor markers that we use in the laboratory. Okay. So what's good about immunohistochemistry, guys? It mixes my two favorite subject. Okay, so immunology and histopathology or histology. So that we could study well our tissues, guys, we will use our antigens and antibodies. Okay? Class, pag sinabi ng immunology, isn't it that it's the study of the immune system? Yan. And one of the main parts of your immune system or important characters or actors in your immune system are your antigens and antibodies. Hindi ba in the midst of our vaccination, ganyan. And class ngayong COVID, di ba? Nalaman ngayon, antigen test. Dati hindi naman nila alam kung anong antigen test eh, di ba? Antibody test. But now, due to this COVID pandemic, yan, nagkaroon ang mga tao ng introduction when it comes to immunology. Yan. So class, isn't it that we represent our antibodies with a Y, di ba? Y. Tapos our antigens with usually triangle or circle. And your antigens attaches to your antibodies. And guys, your antibodies could be very highly specific. Yan. Pag monoclonal antibody, guys, siya, it's very specific to one antigen. Yan. And very specific to one particular site on an antigen pag monoclonal antibody. But polyclonal antibodies, guys, they are more cheaper to produce. And what's amazing about them, polyclonal, because they attaches to the different sites of an antigen. So, kakaiba siya. Okay, polyclonal antibodies. And it also could attach to another antibody. Okay? So, ganun. Depende kung saan siya naka-specify. Okay? So, class, an antibody could attach to another antibody, Ayan, mamaya pag-usapan natin. And another principle that is attached is chemistry. Okay? So guys, this enzyme, your enzymes class, are used as a label on your antibodies, hindi ba? So they could be used as a label. So they are attached, they are conjugated on your antibody. So kunyari, Y yung antibody mo, may naka-attach na label, okay? So that your antibodies could be easily detected. Ma'am, isn't it that we have 5 types of antibodies, di ba? IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE, IgD, gamed. Yan. So, class, ang usually na ginagamit na antibody sa as a reagent are IgG. IgG, immunoglobulin G. And apparently, class, pag nag-combine ng IgG sa isang antigen, minsan masyadong maliit yung signal or yung positive reaction or yung aggregation. Minsan masyadong maliit. Sometimes we need a label, yan, or a conjugate para mas makita yung reaction. Okay? So, ito ang gamit ng chemistry part. So, enzyme. So, sometimes, hindi lang enzymes, but also radionuclei, yung mga radioactive labels, and so on. So, class, yan ha. So, in the process of identifying the specific tumor or antigen, gumagamit tayo ng immunology. So, madalas, guys, ang hinahanap natin dito is an antigen. So, here, as we go through our study, parang napagbabaliktad ko yung word na antigen and tumor, okay? Usually, hindi naman dapat sila, magkaiba talaga to. But sometimes, the tumors that we are trying to find, yan, it acts as the antigen, okay? So class, look at this, how valuable our immunohistochemistry is. In a routine H-hematoxylin and eosin staining, guys. So this is what poorly differentiated cancer looks like. Yan. So ang mga poorly differentiated cancer, yan, maganda gamitan ng cytokeratin, especially if these are epithelial cells. So after staining it, immunohistochemistry, so specific to low molecular weight cytokeratin, yan. So marker of squamous differentiation, trying to assess the nature of poorly differentiated carcinoma. Example, sabi ng pathologist, yan, hindi ko alam hindi ko alam ang itsura ng cancer, sometimes overgrowth of cells. Yan, so sabihin ng pathologist, okay? So it seems that we have a poorly differentiated carcinoma. Yan. So that we could assess it further, we would use immunohistochemical stain, which is cytokeratin. Yan. So when something is a poorly differentiated carcinoma, so masasabi na so nung in-stain siya ng H&E, hindi pa alam kung anong grade. Pero nung na-stain na ng cytokeratin, so sabi, grade 3, it is disorganized and tend to grow and spread faster than grade 1. Ayan. So at least nagkaroon ng specificity ng talagang specific classification yung tumor, diba? Galing. Okay? So your immunohistochemistry is a technique. These are methods in identifying an antigen or a tumor by means of antigen-antibody reaction. Yan. We are trying to localize the specific antigen in the form of a tumor. Okay? So using antigen and antibody interaction or recognition. Yan. So kilalanin natin. So we have two main methods on immunohistochemistry. We have direct immunohistochemistry. So very simple. Sabihin natin, ito yung mga characters sa direct immunohistochemistry. So this is your antigen or your tumor. And simply, guys, only one primary antibody will attach to your antigen, okay? And this antibody, just what I told you a while ago, it could be conjugated or labeled with an enzyme, okay? So para makita mo para magkaroon ng reaction ang enzyme, isn't it that there should be a substrate? So the medtech should add a substrate to form a colored product. So itong colored product, guys, yung makikita sa staining natin. So this is direct immunohistochemistry. Here, guys, in indirect histochemistry, yeah. So this is more robust, mas maraming characters involved. So these are your antigens or tumors, and we have a primary antibody. And this primary antibody, guys, however, it does not have a label yet. Okay? The secondary antibody, the one that will attach to your primary antibody, yun ang may label. Okay? Sa indirect immunohistochemistry, ang may label ay yung secondary antibody or also called as your second layer antibody. Ito yung first layer antibody mo. So, class, ngayon, pag-usapan natin. So, usually, let's compare and contrast. So when we say direct immunohistochemistry, a labeled antibody reacts directly with the antigen. Okay? So the advantage of direct immunohistochemistry, it's short and it's quick. Yan. However, it could be insensitive due to little signal amplification. So since the antigen and antibody reaction is so small, yun, isa lang mo, I mean, isang antigen, isang antibody, yun na, tapos na. So the problem is sometimes the signal could be so small. Hindi ba yun yung problem ng immunoglobulin G minsan eh? Minsan yung reaction niya, yung aggregates na nag-form plus masyadong maliit. So in immunohistochemistry, the signal that could be produced if it's detected by a machine, masyadong konti. Okay? So it could be insensitive. It's not enough to detect the antigen. Okay, so it's not enough. So now, guys, the most frequently used now, that method is your indirect immunohistochemistry. Huwag kakalimutan. So it's more sensitive due to a signal amplification since more antibodies are involved. It is more economical since secondary antibodies may be used to various primary antibodies. Okay? So guys, your primary antibodies class are very specific. It finds the specific antigen. Okay? However, itong secondary antibodies naman, class, it could be multi-purpose. So, malamang polyclonal antibody ang mga secondary antibodies. Okay? So, isa pa, class. So, almost the same image. So, yung mga primary, ito yung antigen natin. So, the source is the tissue. So, in the tissue, there are tumors. Yan. So, if there's no reaction, the antigen or tumor is absent. If there's a positive reaction, after indirect staining, the antigen or tumor is present. Okay? So, your primary antibodies, ito po, yung tong purple, they are your first layer sino ba yung ito? They are your first layer antibodies, yan, which will directly react to your antigen and they are unlabeled, okay? And your secondary antibodies, your second layer antibodies, and they are conjugated. Yan, sometimes with enzyme, most common, fluorescent dye, colloidal metal, gold, silver, hapten, and radioactive matters. Yan. So, pero so far, enzyme lang naman gagamitin natin. Ayan yung example natin. And class, there's need to be a substrate that is added to produce a colored product. Okay, laging nag-add ng substrate. Di ba sa CC2 class, enzyme plus substrate is equal to product. Your substrate is transformed into a colored product. So what's great, guys, about your immunohistochemistry, it could classify your tumors, okay? So there are different classification of tumors based on its histology, kung galing ba siyang germ cells, mesenchymal cells, yan, or galing bang breast, galing bang ovaries, galing bang lungs, galing kidneys, yan. So it could diagnose the classification of tumors. So it's very important that we would able to classify the tumors. So depending on its malignancy, diba? Yung grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, yan. So does it sorry, is it poorly differentiated? Pag poorly differentiated, guys, medyo malala na siya. Pag well differentiated, parang mababang grade pa lang siya. So grade, it's poorly differentiated. Yan. So yung mga grade 1 na tumor, yan, yung hindi pa masyadong malala, yan, 100 to 75% differentiated. Yan. So ibig sabihin nagma-mature. So if there are matured cells, yan, yung grade 1 pa lang yung based on the classification. So pag grade 4, yan, 25 to 0% differentiated. Ibig sabihin talagang puro immature cells. Yan. So, depending on the number of matured cells based on Broder's classification. Yan. Tapos yan, may staging rin of cancer. Yan. Depending on the size of the primary lesion, extent of spread. Pag-usapan natin yan sa basic histopathology. Ay, sorry, di pa tayo tapos. Okay, so detect if there are micrometastases, if there is, the cancer is already slowly spreading around the body. Example, parang around the breast, di ba? If there are metastases already on the lymph nodes. Prognostic markers, it's important to see the extent, the progression of the disease, and marker for therapeutic response, if the chemotherapy is working, the meds are working, yun. And identification of infectious organism, just like your identification of spirochetes, using Wade fight, ganon. Yun, Wharton study. So, limitations of immunohistochemistry, guys. Experience daw is critical. Yan. So, pathologists who are really trained, medtech who are really trained. So, when the medtech are well trained, or the histotechnician is well trained, the pathologist is well trained, and they have years of experiences already, paganda ng paganda yung results. Ganoon, di ba? The availability of antibodies. Isn't it that antibodies are expensive class, yan, mas na yung mga monoclonal antibodies. So, depending on the availability of the antibodies, isn't it? And sometimes there is antigen loss, wherein the antigens, hindi maganda yung pagkaka-retrieve ng antigen, okay? So, it's not well preserved or nasira yung antigen that we are trying to find. Yan. So, in your preparation or in your processing, apparently, nasira mo yung antigen or nawala, diba, it could result to a false negative result. Ibig sabihin, meron naman talagang cancer, pero since hindi mo na-retrieve ng maayos, hindi mo nakuha ng maayos yung antigen class, it seems na negative yung pasyente, pero positive talaga, false negative result. So, delix yan. Okay? So, guys, these are the tests. The procedures on how we process, yan, an overview on how we process your immunohistochemistry. So first is the paraffinization, okay? So we remove the paraffin, yan. So after processing our tissue sections, yan, nasa slide na siya, 'di ba? Coated with polyl lysine. Hindi ba yan, 'di ba yan yung adhesive for immunohistochemistry. So remove the paraffin through addition of xylene or melt it out. And next is blocking or quenching, yan, of endogenous enzymes. So class, these endogenous enzymes could cross-contaminate. Yan, kasi diba enzymes yung label natin. So para mawala sila, we could add 3% hydrogen peroxide or free avidin. Yan. So di ko alam ang avidin. Yan, research. Third is ito, antigen retrieval, okay? We are unmasking, yan. So, kumbaga, parang it's hidden. The antigenic sites are hidden, or the epitome, yan, epitope class are hidden. So, how would we retrieve it? Through proteolytic enzyme digestion, by subjecting it to enzymes like trypsin and protease, or microwaving it for 20 minutes, or pressure cooker. Yan, less time consuming and more consistent. So, yan. Next is blocking of non-specific binding. So class, we need to, non-specific binding. Yan. So antibodies could bind to contaminants. So we could block it through methanol. Ang level ng hydrogen peroxide. Methanol hydrogen peroxide or hydrogen peroxide in sodium azide. Now, we add the primary antibody. We add the secondary antibody. Okay? So, depending on the methods. So, kung direct technique, edi primary antibody lang inad mo. Kung indirect technique, edi dalawa, primary and secondary. So, our 3-step indirect, meron pa, a labeled antibody against the labeled secondary antibody. So ito yung 'di ba? 2-step yung step indirect. So pag 3-step, meron na namang isa pang labeled antibody. So mas strong na naman yung signal pag may ganun. Galing, no? So maraming budget for antibodies. Addition of a chromogen substrate so that a colored product would be produced. Now there is so yung primary stain mo is yung immunohistochemistry. So if to improve the staining, yan, we can counter stain, dehydrate, then cover slipping. So class, these are your classification of antigen based on the origin of tumors. Yan. So here, for example, epithelial tumors. So keratin is good for a marker for epithelial cells. So marami kanina, 'di ba, may na-discuss tayo, keratin. Yan. So, maraming types of keratin sa module nyo. So, I just want you to be familiar para may idea naman kayo. Keratin, epithelial, tumor markers. So, if the tumor is made up of epithelial cells, yan, sensitive ang keratin. We also have EMA, epithelial membrane antigen. Yan, it's positive for adenocarcinoma. Sabi niya, adenocarcinoma are cancers that are from your glands. Yan. So, class, please go over it. Ito, CEA. Hindi ko makalimutan to, pang gastrointestinal tract. PSA, prostate specific antigen for prostatic cancer. Yan. So, intermediate filament markers. So, itong intermediate filament, common siya sa muscles. Hindi ba itong actin at myosin? Di ba mag-partner sila? Ito, actin. Yan. Marker. Yan. Presence of actin. Di ba? Yan. For smooth muscle, skeletal, and cardiac muscle. Itong S100 class, it is also used in melanoma identification. Ito, lymphoma. Ang good daw na tumor marker or antigen marker is leukocyte common antigen. Germ tumor cells. Yan. So, germ tumor cells are cells that come from your reproductive system. So, example, HCG. Human chorionic gonadotropin. Yan. So, pag pregnant ka, tumataas tong HCG levels. At class, so if you have also choriocarcinoma, yon, cancer from abnormal pregnancy. Yan. So, yon, yung HCG. Class, itong mga tumor markers na to or itong mga antigens na to, available rin sila sa serum nyo. So, pwede nyo pag-usapan to sa clinical chemistry. They are available in your serum levels. You could measure it. However, yun, since kung nagpa-opera ka na and the doctor wants to classify the tumor, yan, he could use immunohistochemistry staining. So, ito lang, class, familiarize yourself lang. So, ito, AFP. Yan, alpha-fetoprotein for liver. Yan. So, breast cancer, CA125. Yan, huwag niyo kalimutan. Breast cancer, CA125. Prostate cancer, PSA. Yan. HCG kasi, di ba, reproductive system. So, testicular, AFP. Yan, ang raming, guys, ito, prostate. Melanoma, S100. Diba? So, you could use different. These are your antigens or tumor markers. So, kung may antibodies ka that are specific to this tumor markers, then you could use it for immunohistochemistry. Yan. So, I want you to familiarize yourself. Sabi ng teacher ko, ito, CA199. Yan. So, itong 99 daw, mukhang isaw. Yan. So, mukhang colon. So, gastrointestine. Yan. Colon. Sa mga digestive tract. Yan. So, I want you to familiarize yourself. Hindi nyo makailangan siguro magtanong lang ako ng ilan ng mga basic. Pero, I just want you to familiarize yourself. Ito, class. Example, nagpatanggal ka talaga ng thyroid, pinatanggal mo lahat kasi may thyroid cancer. Yan. So, class, kung may natitira pang cancer, yan, magiging positive ka sa calcitonin, CEA, or thyroglobulin. Kasi, since natanggal na yung thyroid mo, dapat negative ka na sa mga markers na to. Yan, sa clinical chemistry na pala to. Pero, since meron ka palang metastasis or meron pang abnormal cells na naiwan, yan, pwede kang maging positive sa mga markers na to. Yan, sa clinical chemistry naman yun. Ayun, guys. So, class, these are your tumor markers, your antigens. They could be detected using immunohistochemistry stain. So, that's it, guys, for the day. I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Stop share. End.